Welcome, everybody. Greetings to this episode of Poly Weekly News. I'm your host, David Dante. We had a little bit of problem with the URL this morning, which I've kind of just fixed a little bit, hopefully. So if you reload the page and reload the tiny URLs, hopefully you'll see everything and it'll work okay. I'll stick a little earplug in my ear to make sure that the audio is getting okay. Before we start the show today, I do want to at least acknowledge and say that we at Poly are, of course, watching the conflict in the Ukraine right now, and our hearts really go out to everyone there, especially our employees, our customers, and partners. All who have been affected, and we're all hoping and praying for a peaceful resolution as soon as possible. It's just a horrible situation there, and we feel for everything that's going on. But the world goes on, the news goes on, and after I pause, I'm going to now move on to our topic for the week, which is Enterprise Connect. Enterprise Connect is coming up in exactly 3 weeks. It's amazing, 3 weeks from now, and I'm really excited to be there. There's so much going on in the world of Enterprise Connect, and so much going on in the fact that we can actually all get together again and be at trade shows. It's really amazing. Let me call up a quick picture, if I can just switch to it, of what it looked like when I was at Enterprise Connect the last time. Just some interesting, getting there, taking a picture, looking at the big sign, and being able to present and all the great stuff. It's going to be really exciting to be able to see and chat with and touch products and solutions and be able to do all those amazing things. So let me bring on my guests, Brian and Eric, and let them introduce themselves and kind of talk about what it is that we can expect this year. So Brian, why don't we start with you? How are things going?
Sure. So, yeah, my name is Brian Phillips. I am part of the product marketing team here at Poly. I focus most specifically on our video solutions. And yeah, I've been here for a little while, based in Boulder, Colorado. It's been, yeah, a bit of an interesting time and interesting transitions with all this, but I'm looking forward to getting back to a first live trade show in a long, long time. It'll be really good to get out and actually see people in person again.
Yeah, exactly. And Eric, why don't I give you the same opportunity? Introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are and what you do, and what's going on with Enterprise Connect in a brief summary.
Okay, thanks very much, David. Thanks for having me. I'm the general manager of Enterprise Connect, and I'm also the program co-chair, which means I kind of oversee just about everything. So everything from the the content of the program to the exhibit hall and all the experiences we build for our attendees. And so I think, as you both said, it's like super exciting that we're going to actually do it, and that it's after 3 years it's going to happen. And yeah, we're really stoked, our team.
Terrific, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being with me. And we'll just have a nice chat this morning about how everything's going on. The first thing we want to talk about really is being back. I mean, I did get to CES this year. CES was down to about a quarter of its normal attendance, which is 40,000 people, which is actually not bad for a trade show. It's maybe low for CES, but it wasn't bad. And you can't break old habits, where I walk over there and I want to shake hands when I see people that I haven't seen in a long time that I love in the industry. We hug, and yes, we were wearing masks at the time, but it's just getting back to that human contact where you can see somebody face to face. And we've had a lot of solutions out over the years, Brian, and this is the first chance people are going to have to actually get their hands on it. I mean, what's going through your heads and your hearts and your thinking right now for the first time? Brian, I'll start with you about actually being in front of clients and being in front of partners again and being with colleagues again.
Well, and in a state in which everything is so different than it was the last time that we were all together, right? I mean, the conversations are different, and the way that people are working is different, and everybody's trying to figure out what the future is going to look like as far as how people are going to be working. And so it's, just a totally different set of conversations than we had in the past too. So it's going to be, it's going to be pretty exciting to finally get kind of some FaceTime with people again. And one of the things I'm looking forward to the most, I think, is just hearing that sort of real time, what's going on in your organization? Like what's happening with return to the office? Is your organization return to the office, or have they already been back in the office? And based on different industries, right? Obviously some like healthcare or education are going to be a totally different animal than your standard just office workers. And so just for me, a lot of it is just going to be hearing in real time from people kind of what's going on, and how has their way of working evolved, and where are they at with people being at home versus being back in, and policies around remote and hybrid. There's, you read articles and you read different kind of anecdotal accounts, but I'm really curious to kind of get the real time feedback from a lot of people on where things are at in their own organizations and where they think things are going to go, and what kind of their predictions for, say, the rest of this year and how things are going to evolve. It's going to be fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's just so much that we want to understand and learn, and so much that we've got built up inside of us. I mean, Eric, I know a lot of that is the same for you, but you've also been, the guy at the tip of the surfboard riding these waves. We're starting, we're stopping, we're going, we're not going, we're doing this, we're doing that. I assume the feelings are the same, but you've also got that roller coaster going on for you as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a place now where we're very comfortable that the show is going to happen. We're, certainly the environment that's going on across the country, we've always been very U.S. centric, so we look primarily at the U.S. and things are looking good. So I think for us it's that kind of what Brian was talking about in terms of really kind of having those sort of deeper conversations with people, or a chance to really, take the opportunity to just kind of listen and kind of draw people out a little bit. The way even good video technology can't always buy you the time and the opportunity to do that. And I think just like the serendipity of being in the same place with people for 3 days, and having the opportunity to run into them, and maybe you ran into somebody you ran into yesterday, so you can kind of pick up and continue the conversation. It's those kind of things that I think people have always loved about events, and that they've missed.
So, Eric, are there any changes that people can expect from the show this year for those that have attended it in the past? Anything different, or is it all going to kind of follow the same format?
Well, it'll be mostly the same. There'll be some changes, but we think that what people want to get back to is what they've been missing. So the conference is really, fundamentally it's the same. The discussions are going to be very different. Obviously, the tracks are different. We've got security as a track now that we didn't have before. Much more emphasis on things like contact center and the kind of workplace issues that that Brian was talking about. And we'll, we've continued to expand our Women in Communications program, so there'll be more of that. We've got some other recognition programs around some awards for IT people who have really gone above and beyond, and also particularly women who have made outstanding contributions or outstanding progress. And then I think the other thing that's different that we didn't have in 2019 is a virtual component to the event. We know that there will be people who want that, and it allows us to reach out internationally more than we ever have, as well as teams that may not be able to bring everybody on the team to Orlando. So we're definitely building up the virtual component, doing some new types of sessions and new types of opportunities for people to engage online.
The virtual component has become such an important thing. I mean, certainly more than I ever realized in my career, is that there are a number of people that just never can get to conferences, whether they're handicapped or homebound or taking care of a loved one or whatever the situation is. We've really opened that door, and I think it's up to us, the professionals in the industry, to kind of keep our shoulder against it and make sure it stays open so that people can attend these things when they're not able to travel.
Couldn't agree more. And there's that set of issues, and it's, it works very well for people who are not generally able to travel, or maybe just aren't able to in a particular time. It's also what has always been the case for the show, at least as long as I've been working on it, is very often, a team will, there'll be a very large team, and sometimes people take turns. It's like your turn this year to go to Enterprise Connect, and then next year another person on the team gets to go. So, this way the people who don't get to go can still experience some of the learning, some of the information gathering that their colleagues that do get to go are having.
Yeah, it's really important. It's something I've keeping my eye on going forward, that we really want to make sure we do. So Brian, tell me a little bit about what the Poly partner and the Poly customer is going to see when they walk to the Poly booth for the show, and what they can kind of expect to do. I think we have some interesting things going on. A lot of it is not, hey, look at our new product. A lot of it is, hey, you can actually touch the product we've been talking about online for a year and a half.
It's really funny. I mean, as a company who exhibits at these events, one of the things that's always a thought as we're planning out what we're going to have in the booth and what we're going to highlight and focus is, well, what's the new compared to the last Enterprise Connect? And I mean, for this one, it's literally everything. I was even thinking, wow, even going back to our Studio X30 and X50 video bars, which are pretty mature products that have been in the market for 2.5 years. This is literally the first time we're actually going to show them in an Enterprise Connect. That dawned on me this morning. It's kind of crazy to think that. But also, again, everything has changed so much in terms of, I think, what customers are looking for and what problems they're trying to solve, that, our big emphasis at the show is around meeting equality and how you drive that effectively in this new kind of hybrid remote style of working, right? What does a meeting equality really mean? And what role do devices play in driving meeting equality? And so one of the things that we have done in terms of how we're structuring, how we're showing things, is making sure that we're not just, maybe in the past at Enterprise Connect, we would have had, the video section, and then the headset section, and then the IP phone section, and then section talking about software and services. And instead, this is really all oriented around work styles and workspaces, and showing in a home working scenario what kinds of Poly technology is going to help drive meeting equality when you're working at home, or when you are in a cubicle back in the office, or when you are jumping into a focus room, or a small or a mid-sized room, or a large-sized room. So kind of putting it in those contexts so people could really envision and start to see what meeting equality might look like as you are going back and forth between home and the office, or you're starting to reopen offices and having people go back in there in this kind of hybrid model. So that's really how we're orienting things at this event, is trying to capture people's imaginations around what that meeting equality might look like in these different types of working scenarios and workspaces.
And it's an interesting phenomenon that we're all going to experience over the course of the next, I don't know, weeks, months, years, where we've all spent, most of us have spent, the majority of knowledge workers spent this time at home. And you gentlemen are joining me on a Zoom call this morning. And what you did was you opened up your compute device at home and you clicked the button and you joined. And it might have been a Microsoft Teams call, or it might have been a Ring Central call, or it might have been a Blue Jeans call, and it didn't matter because you just clicked and joined. And we're all going to go back into the office. The purpose of the office will have completely changed. Where we're not going to go there to type memos anymore. We can do that at home. We're going to go there to be with our colleagues. And when we go into the conference rooms, to experience this meeting equality, it's no longer going to be this easy one click in many cases, or when companies have committed themselves to one platform and the call request coming in from the client is from another platform. Not every piece of equipment out there can do that, and not every piece of equipment can do that easily. So Brian, I mean, I know I'm proud of what we do with the Studio X series and with some of our other products, but that's definitely going to be an issue, is how do you get this equal experience now that we're going to be back in rooms instead of managing our own little personal terminal?
Absolutely. And it goes both ways, right? It's making sure the person who is at home feels like an equal participant in the conversation. But same thing with the individuals in a meeting room. If you are going back to, you and six colleagues are going to get together in the office for, right, a big kind of collaborative working session with some colleagues who are on the far end. You don't want to be the one who's kind of hidden in the back corner of the meeting room either, feeling like, well, I'm barely seen on video over here while my colleagues who are at home have these nice full screen windows. And so how can we use some of our latest innovations to help drive that kind of meeting equality and make sure, and I mean, to your point, that the conversations become totally different when we've been used to this remote working over the last 2 years. So then what are your expectations when you get back in that office? Because it may not be so much oftentimes around the large meeting room. But one of the things I'm really curious for at Enterprise Connect this year is to hear the conversation around focus rooms, because I think this is starting to become a bigger and bigger topic. It's kind of like 3 or 4 years ago, we were all talking about huddle rooms, right? And how we were transforming from larger rooms to huddle rooms, but huddle rooms really meaning, right, these rooms of 3, 4, 5 people, a small group that's going to physically get together in the room. Well, now I think that's transforming into the focus room, where I'm going back in the office, but you know what? I don't have a cubicle assigned to me anymore. Now it's all hoteling spaces, and I'm maybe reserving a space and I'm dropping into an open cubicle hoteling kind of world. And then I need to jump on some video calls, and I feel a little awkward doing that from this hoteling cube. So I need a space that I can easily jump into and get on a video call. And again, I need to make sure that's really easy. I can jump into my Zoom call, my Blue Jeans call, my Teams call, right, as easily as I can at home. And so how are we making sure that our customers are able to deploy those kind of small 1 to 2 person rooms effectively, so that people don't feel like, well, geez, I could have been more productive if I'd been at home because I feel super awkward in this hoteling cube trying to get on all my video calls, right? It's just it's transforming facilities and these types of workspaces. And I think focus rooms are going to be a big part of the conversation in Enterprise Connect, and something that a lot of enterprises are trying to wrestle with as they're figuring out what a return to the office looks like.
Yeah, if enterprises aren't making significant changes to the way their offices work and layout and footprint right now, I think they're missing the opportunity. So Eric, Brian and I are talking about, all things Poly, and we understand what our story is. But what are you overhearing from some of your other keynotes and some of the other people that are going to be showing at the show? Is it similar messages or other things that are diverging and interesting? I know that there have been some announcements over the last couple of weeks. What's on your radar?
Well, certainly everything that you've been talking about, the whole issue around meeting equality. We've got a session on that, and it's a continual topic of conversation. And I think also kind of just the whole, the kind of the how do you approach the task that's in front of the IT group and the people specifically who are working on AV, video, collaboration kind of stuff, and the need to kind of be sort of nimble and not really knowing, for a lot of companies that may be just now going back to the office, what's that going to look like? How are people, having a plan, but being willing and able to kind of change the plan agilely, so that you as you learn how people really are using the tools you've given them that you can kind of keep iterating and improving.
Yeah, and
Kind of. Okay.
no, no, I was just saying it's interesting, because as you talk, I'm thinking about the last time I was in an enterprise big conference room, 20 people sitting in the room, and there's a beautiful, speakerphone in the middle of the table, one of ours, of course, thank you, but the host of the meeting says something like, "Okay, everybody in the room needs to be quiet now, because we need to let the people on the far end talk." And I'm just thinking how long it's been since I've actually even been on an audio call without video, and how inappropriate it's going to be for people to have calls and conversations where you literally need to stop the people in the room for the people on the far end to contribute. I think we're coming back to a completely different science and a completely different culture where everybody has this expectation. Of course, we're going to be able to communicate. And if they can't, it's not going to go down very well. And I think that that's going to be one of the overriding themes that a lot of the exhibitors at the show are going to put forward. Would you agree with that, Eric?
Yeah, I think so. I think the sort of relearning how we communicate with people in the office, people in meeting rooms, especially. And again, to your point, I've been on only a handful still of calls where now you've got a conference room that's participating in a call, and then you've got a handful of people who are all on their desktop, and yeah, you're looking at the meeting room, and it's if you know the people in the meeting, you kind of know that's who that is talking, but they may have limited ability to share their screens with the system that they currently have in their meeting room. They, in many ways, they're much more disadvantaged than the people who are joining remotely. And so I think just the dynamics of how meeting, of how we treat each other in meetings, and in terms of sort of the etiquette, I think is still to be worked out.
Yeah, and Brian, we still have a lot of companies with legacy equipment, and the definition of legacy equipment is now probably 2 years old, as opposed to 7 or 10 or whatever. But we have a lot of companies that are producing these bowling alley shots, where you have this mechanical pan tilt zoom camera, or maybe a couple of them in front of the room, and all you see are really tiny faces going down the table. And I think we're at a point now where technology is finally getting it to the place where we're going to have more EPTZ cameras where there's no motors, nothing distracting in the front of the room, and people who are speaking are going to be framed appropriately, rule of thirds and all the rest of that. So I mean, that's what we're seeing with our technology. I think that's what we're starting to see from most of the progressive companies across the board. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, expectations have changed, right? And it's going to be imperative that those individuals in the room feel, to Eric's point, like they're as much of an active and complete participant in that conversation, and as visible as part of that conversation as the people who are dialing from home or dialing in remotely. So the camera technology and having smart AI driven technology to create that kind of experience, I think is going to be huge for driving this kind of meeting equality, right? And there's tons of work that we're doing there. There's actually, if for any folks who are at Enterprise Connect, definitely be sure to stop by our booth, because we're actually going to be showing some things along those lines that we actually haven't announced yet. So we're going to have some special previews of some forthcoming technology that you're not going to see announced there. We're not going to do a press release about it, but we're going to be doing some special previews in the booth of some things that are coming pretty quickly, that are going to help to drive that further, right? Because it's going to be imperative for the not just for the people who happen to be in the office and they're going into a room to make sure they're feeling like part of the conversation, but even because one of the things I think that's going to be an interesting challenge for a lot of organizations is even just encouraging people to go back. I mean, I sense a lot of hesitancy on the part of enterprises of not wanting to push too hard on forcing people back into the office, especially in the current climate around hiring, and you don't want to lose people because you're frustrating them because they're not able to work the way they want to work. And so I think something a lot of organizations are going to need to do is encourage people to come back in, and again, show them and convince them, right? You're not losing a ton. There's advantages to getting not only some face-to-face contact with colleagues, but when you do need to jump in that call from the meeting room, you're still getting a great experience, right? And so I think technology is going to serve a big role in helping organizations encourage users to come back into the office and say, it's going to be worthwhile. It's going to enhance your working experience rather than being something you're forced to do.
Well, 2 points there that I want to definitely highlight and bring out and join into this conversation. One, you're talking about some sneak previews of technology that we haven't announced yet,
Yep.
that people are going to be able to see when they go to the show. And all of the companies that are working on collaboration, be they platforms or hardware, we're all trying to work on this meeting equity and meeting equality. So I think you can expect to see technology improvements in terms of how people are seen and how they're viewed in the meeting. So I want to make sure that I point that out. That I think that's something that we're very close on. Someone has asked a question in the chat about that specifically, and I do want to make sure that everybody understands that we are going to show some things that are going to be
Yep.
cool and interesting. Definitely a reason to go to the show, right?
Yep, absolutely. We're going to be doing some live demos of some new upcoming things that we're going to be announcing very soon, but won't have quite yet at Enterprise Connect. So kind of a special exclusive sneak preview for those who are in attendance at Enterprise Connect. Enterprise Connect. You'll see some cool stuff that we've been working on back in the labs that we're just about getting ready to launch.
And if you look on the tiny part of the screen on the far right side, you can see that we've got a little URL there that takes you right to the Poly landing page. If you'd like to sign up for a free pass with us and make some meeting time with the team and take a look at everything, you want to tell everybody what that URL is?
Yeah, it's that tinyurl.com/ and then just go poly at EC22.
I think people are going to have a great experience there. Eric, tell us a little bit about the keynotes. I don't think we really spent a lot of time on there. Can you give us like a minute or two on who we can expect to see and what we might expect to hear from them?
Absolutely. So we've got 6 keynotes this year from executives from Microsoft, Cisco, AWS, Zoom, RingCentral, and Google. And I think, those are obviously the kind of very large players in the industry. I think, several of them are planning to, if not make announcements or at least really kind of make very definitive statements about kind of, directions and sort of strategically where they see the industry going. I think it's an important time, obviously, to hear from these vendors. We're the last time that we did Enterprise Connect in person, I think the landscape was very different, and it's gotten shaken up a lot by the last 2 years. And so getting to hear sort of how these companies, I suspect, talk a little bit looking back 2 years, but really looking forward. I mean, you've seen so many things happen just right. Zoom announcing last week that they're going to make a major push into the contact center marketplace. AWS, obviously, that's sort of their big play in this space is Amazon Connect. And I think that's something we're going to hear a lot about as a theme in a lot of both the kind of strategic sessions, and also we've got a track on it, is this whole customer experience thing. That's just become, the combination of, especially in the early part of the pandemic, that being, the only way to do customer service was digitally, and at the same time, on the other end of things, the agents were all, or not all, but were substantially moved to a remote working situation. So how you provided that capability to your agents was critical, and the world's not going to just go back to the way customer service and customer experience was, and many of the internal processes and internal businesses within an enterprise, the way they relate to the customer experience has changed as digital transformation has accelerated, both in the kind of communications collaboration end of things, but across all the other groups and functions that an enterprise has. One of the general sessions we're doing, Sheila McGee-Smith, which probably most of us know is she's kind of the leading analyst in the contact center space, is going to talk with some strategic leaders about sort of who makes contact center decisions moving forward. When marketing and sales and customer experience are all the people in those different areas, have got really a much bigger stake in contact center technology than they did 2 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. It's a growing space. The M&A that didn't happen, the launches of products. It's really interesting. The one thing I'll ask you kind of on the funny side is, have all the keynote speakers agreed to wear long pants and nobody wearing shorts this year?
As far as I know, there are no plans for anybody to wear shorts or pajamas or anything like that. Um, and but I think to that point, it. I mean, it will be kind of, I think, as a sidelight. I think um, the definition of business casual probably has changed, and I think people are well. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I haven't been out myself to a show yet. And I mean, I think a lot of people feel a little more casual, but maybe people are excited about the chance to wear their good clothes again.
Yeah, I think, we talked about this a little bit before we started the live show today, is that, what we're experiencing in conferences and seminars over probably the next year and a half, 2 years is a ramp. So I think it'd be fair to say you're probably not going to see as many people at this show, or at any of the other conferences that we go to during the course of the year as you normally do. But, we're finally in a time where the numbers look good around the pandemic, where people are committed and interesting to go. I've been communicating with some of my good friends and colleagues in the UK that are all excited and making their plans to be there. A lot of the analysts, I think the analyst community is going to be there around 90-95%, which is exciting. The vendors that support the collaboration industry are going to be there in droves. There are a couple of very interesting exceptions, which I won't get into in the show right now, but I'll certainly say that if you're a customer of one of the companies that doesn't support the show, maybe it's a good time to panic. But that aside, I think that if we talk about what we're coming back to, and that was the other point that I wanted to make with what you were saying before, Brian, I promised two, so here's the second one, is that the return to office we've probably turned the page on the way businesses, enterprises, organizations that employ knowledge workers look at working in collaboration. It's very hard to and I've said this probably for 2 years during the pandemic. It's very hard to realize when you're living through a moment of fundamental change, of upheaval in the moment. We'll look back, 3, 4, 5 years from now at this return of Enterprise Connect, and we realize just how much change, just how much of a pivot the industry made right around here, and trying to really catch that and be available for our clients and our partners to do the right thing. It's exciting, but it's hard, right?
It's very hard, and it still has so much evolving to do, I think, as far as how it settles out. And that's where I do think the fact that to a large degree workers have a lot of power these days because the job market's pretty hot. If you're in a working situation where you've got an employer who is now insisting that you're going to have to go back into the office when you don't really want to, you can go find someone to hire you who will. Those things ebb and flow, and at some point it's going to be employers more in control of the hiring market and less so on workers. But for now, I think it's going to be interesting over these next couple of years as we get to a sort of realignment, because I think right now we kind of have this mismatch. We've got organizations that are completely open to whether it's remote, hybrid, work however you want it, however it's going to be best for you. You've got some others who say we really want some in-person collaboration, and we want to have people working for us who do want to go back in, even if it's only 2 or 3 days a week, because we value that face-to-face connectivity. And we have a mismatch of workers working for those types of organizations. Because I think on the worker side too, something that doesn't get talked about maybe enough is because we talk a lot about the individuals who now are at home and they say, well, I don't want to go back. I don't ever want to have to go back into the office, and I don't want you to make me do that. But I think there's also a contingent of those who would like to get back in and get some face-to-face interaction. They find value in that from a working standpoint and from a social standpoint. And so I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see an interesting realignment of organizations and individuals who value one side of that equation versus the other side of that equation, kind of shuffling around. And it's going to be a little bit awkward until we get there, is we're going to have this sort of mismatch between the desires of the organization versus the desires of their workers, as we kind of get to this kind of new equilibrium around that. So, and again, technology can do a ton to help us bridge those gaps, right? I mean, just again, I still think back sometimes to what if this had all happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago? I where we're fortunate that we had tools that could kind of help us get through this and still stay productive. And now we've got a whole lot of new innovations, a lot of which I think we're going to see on the show floor there at Enterprise Connect that really going to help enable this new way of working in ways that we couldn't even have imagined even 5 or 10 years ago.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think this is, like I said, we're going to look back at this time and really realize what we went through and say, my God, how did we survive all of that? How did we survive the pivot and live the change? All right, so a few more points before we wrap up today. A couple of things that I wanted to get into. First of all, our good friend Elise in Chicago, Eric, is pointing out that I need to get you a headset. So when I see you at Enterprise Connect this year, I'll hand you. You let me know what headset you want, and I'll bring one out of my stash here in the basement. And by the way, since I'm saying it, since we're talking about it, I will have a couple of headsets with me at Enterprise Connect. So if you're a Poly Weekly News viewer and you find me at Enterprise Connect and talk about Poly Weekly News, I may hand you one or two of them. So keep that in mind as an unannounced contest to try and get you to come down and do that. So again, Brian, if people do want to come down and they want to hit the Poly landing page, where do they go to sign up for that?
Yes, so tinyurl.com/poly poly not the symbol. That doesn't work in these URLs, right? So tinyurl.com/poly EC22.
And if you're not particularly a Poly fan, although I don't know why you wouldn't be, Eric, how do we get more information about the show and sign up in general?
We'll go to enterpriseconnect.com/Orlando. That takes you to the landing page. You'll find you can find everybody who's on the show floor. You can find all the conference sessions, the virtual conference sessions as well, all the different networking activities, things that are going on around the show. So yeah, just go to enterpriseconnect.com/Orlando, and that's the place to start.
Terrific. Thanks very much. So Brian, if somebody wants to reach out to you personally, ask you some questions, engage with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, feel free. For anybody at Poly, maybe I shouldn't say that, you can reach any of us at firstname.lastname@poly.com. So I'm just Brian.Phillips with 2 L's at poly.com, or reach out to me on Twitter, Brian_Phillips7. You can find me on there.
And what about the first 6, Brian Phillips? Are they any good?
They are. I'm not going to pass any judgment on the first 6 Brian Phillips, just out of an abundance of caution.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, especially on a live show. Eric, I'll ask you the same question. If somebody wants to reach out to you, what should they do?
Best place to reach out to me is just at my email. It's same basic format, Eric.Kraft, and it's KRAP as in Peter, F as in Frank. So Eric.Kraft at Informa, and that's INFORMA.com. Informa is the name of the parent company that owns Enterprise Connect.
Terrific. Brian, Eric, thank you very much for joining me this week. I really appreciate it. I think it's a great show. I can't wait to see people. I'm going to be there, as I said, in 3 weeks, and as I said, people should come and try and look for me and find me. We've got a couple of interesting shows, which I'll mention in a minute, coming up. We're going to do this show, Weekly News, almost live from the floor of Enterprise Connect on March 21st. So that's when it's happening, assuming we're all still there and we get there on the 20th, and that's what you'll see on the 21st. For next week, though, we've got a very interesting show coming up with where we're going to be talking all things Microsoft. I think it's going to be a fabulous show. My colleagues Duncan and Brandon will be there, as well as Greg from Microsoft. We'll talk about Front Row. We'll talk about MTRs. We'll talk about the latest and greatest and everything that's going on in the Microsoft world and in the Poly Microsoft world. So I think it's going to be an awesome show, and I hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, for this Monday, we're hoping for peace. Thanks very much for joining us, and we will see you live on Monday on the next Poly Weekly News.